Mile dirt track racing has been around in Southern California as long as men have been there to pit horsepower against a clay oval. Tracks like the old ASCOT Speedway and the Silvergate track in San Diego were among the first to open. The fairgrounds in El Centro provided lots of action during the 1950s and 1960s. The one-time horse racing facility was a challenge to both men and equipment. The absence of an outside crash wall meant that you'd have to be on your toes if you didn't want to wind up among the trees. El Centro was a treacherous piece of real estate, as Ron Ray found out. Ray, popularly known as the California Cowboy, found this ride wilder than anything a rodeo cowboy has ever experienced. Ray's car bit the dust, but Ron came back to race another day. In the 1970s, longtime promoter Don Basile jumped into the racing wars with the South Bay Speedway in Chula Vista. Basile's track featured long straightaways and wide sweeping turns, along with an 8-foot-high crash wall. But even that was not enough to keep CRA driver Walt Allen in the ballpark. Walt was bumped and bruised, but otherwise okay. These half-mile tracks have come and gone over the years, leaving just one speedway to stand alone, the legendary ASCOT Park in Gardena. For the last 32 years, ASCOT has been synonymous with the best open-wheel racing in the West. Careers have been launched and champions made at the track just south of downtown Los Angeles. The first ASCOT Speedway was located at Florence and Central and featured the likes of Tommy Milton and Wilbur Shaw. Then there was Legion ASCOT at Valley and Soto Streets. Rex Mays and Ted Horn were among the regulars. When Southern ASCOT and Southgate was in its heyday, George Robeson and Hal Cole were among the stars. During the middle 50s, the current ASCOT Speedway sprung up in the shadows of Old Carroll Speedway.
The ASCOT that we know today started in 1957.
Oh, I
and
see.
they went over and took the measurements off the Old Carroll Speedway, ran the 5 blocks up to where ASCOT is now, staked them out in the dump, and built the racetrack. Then we ran roadsters, all roadsters. Then we began letting sprint cars run with the roadsters. By 1957, most of the guys had changed to sprints, and we made it mandatory that you run a sprint car body from 1957 on.
The name ASCOT actually started in the early 1900s and is carried through to now, but there have been at least three different tracks with the name ASCOT. So there have been so many drivers that have come out of the dirt tracks in Southern California.
Well, they were more careful, and they had to be. There's a lot of them ain't around anymore. See, I drove with McGrath and Linden and Parnelli and all of the guys. Most of them went on back to Speedway, but I had a family, and I couldn't afford to go back there and stay the length of time that I needed. And back in those days, when you took a contract on a job to drive a car, while you were practically set up for the year.
While Prosser had to let the opportunity slip by, guys like Parnelli Jones and Roger McCluskey used their early days at ASCOT as a training ground for the big time.
Well, I think that this type of track, for an example, gives you a lot of that wheel-to-wheel contact, and you learn where you can put a car and what you can get away with, and therefore it helps you when you run the bigger speedway. And of course, dirt is a little different than pavement, but on the other hand, learning to slide a car around certainly helps you when you get the car sideways on the pavement.
ASCOT is one of the few tracks, especially in Southern California, that have been around for, a pretty good number of years. I think when I first ran here, and I think that was about the time when it first opened, or when we started running sprint cars here, that was back in, about 55, 56, something like that. And that's, in Southern California, if you raced, that's where you raced. Jack Gardner was strong. Colby Scroggins, he was strong. Showing my age, I can't remember that far back, but there really was, a pretty good gang of them. They were pretty tough racers.
Another guy Parnelli remembers fondly was Jim Hurtubise, and they staged some great duels.
That's right. Jim was, of course, wilder than I. I mean, he always drove her in there and hoped like heck he could save it. But he was a very good race driver, and and he was in my era, and I loved him dearly.
Two-time Indy winner Roger Ward spent time behind the wheel racing against Parnelli and Hurtubise, and he remembers ASCOT as a breeding ground for many great drivers.
Of course, years ago, Southern California was a hotbed of racing. We don't have as many racetracks today as we should have. Consequently, not as many places for people to start, but it's still a hotbed of auto racing.
Well, one of the reasons was we could run all year long, which so the guys in the Midwest who really wanted to get experience in the wintertime had to come to California or the West Coast to do it. And LA being the hotbed of racing, you had the Offie plant here, you had Frank Curtis here, the different builders of the chassis were here, so this was the natural spot.
Over the years, many of Indy's all-time greats found time to challenge the ASCOT Oval. It's kind of a who's who of racing. A.J. Foyt, Mario Andretti, Bobby Unser, Al Unser Sr. and his son Little Al, Don Branson, Johnny Rutherford, Mike Mosley, Bruce Walkup, George Snyder, and the list goes on and on. Now, J.C. Agajanian Jr. remembers fondly two second-generation drivers, Gary Bettenhausen and Bill Vukovich.
And my brothers and I kind of grew up with the Bettenhausens and the Vukoviches, and my dad would have their dad over, their fathers would come over to race for my father. Well, our fathers were doing racing business, us kids would play. Later on, Gary got in a race car and Billy got in a race car, and my brothers and I took my father's position as far as the promotion end of it. And when I saw those guys race out there, I mean, they would race so hard, they would pull tricks on each other, they'd put a wheel under one another, and it would get downright nasty once in a while. I've seen both of them get on their heads, get out and just about duke it out together, fist fighting and just getting wild, and later on have a beer together and laugh it off.
For younger brother Chris Agajanian, Mario Andretti holds a special spot.
I remember a time when we were at home sitting around the dinner table and my dad was talking about some guy that's an Italian guy coming over and he's going to race over at ASCOT, and I'm going, you know, who is this guy? But ended up everyone ends up knowing who Mario Andretti was, and at that point the guy really wasn't speaking English very well, and he came out and really impressed us, because normally a European driver coming over and running on a classic oval track, dirt oval, which is a real Americana type of racing, where does he get experience like that? They race on the asphalt and the road courses, but where would Mario Andretti get this kind of experience? So he was quite a phenomenon to come over here and do real well.
There's the Rutmans and Parnelli Jones and a good number of other drivers that have come through here. I think we had almost 20 drivers on the grid last year at Indianapolis that had all raced here at one time or the other. So even though there are a lot of road racers now that are racing in IndyCar racing, there's still a lot of them coming off of the ASCOT dirt.
And it is perhaps the dirt that has made ASCOT famous. Each winter, new clay is added, so the track is always racing ready. According to USAC champion Dave Blaney, it's one of the best dirt ovals in the country.
Oh yeah, we get everything imaginable, you know. And this weekend here, they've run four nights in a row, and you know, the sun's been out every day, and the weather's been hot, and they get the track in perfect shape every night. So, you know, they've got it down as good as anybody in the country as far as that goes.
Well, you know, ASCOT's been good because there's always been a two-groove deal, you know. I mean, you can run high or low, and some nights, you know, it's only on the top, and some nights it's only on the bottom, but most of the time you can run high or low here.
It's real clay, real tacky, where the non-wing cars will bicycle because of a hole in the Midwest tracks, because they dig up a little more, they're a little drier, different kind of dirt. ASCOT, they bicycle because of the tackiness in the berm, or the cushion as we call it, builds up as the cars move it out, and so you really got to be careful. It's a real tacky, fast racetrack. The racetrack surface is normally better here than most any of the other racetracks you go to. I don't know what they do to it. They've learned over the years to prepare it really good, and it seems to stay good for us, and it puts on a good show.
Last week was pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
A little dry in the middle, but you can still run top and bottom. So.
And are you 2 weeks in a row now turning 18s?
3 weeks.
3 weeks in a row?
Yeah.
Jeez. Set a record if you turn 18 this week.
Track's fast.
It's been fast
it's
for last
smooth.
month, huh?
Yeah, it's been real smooth, and the cushion's not too high.
Great.
Really nice to run on.
It stays wetter, moisture, the curvature of the track's different, turns are sharper. You have to pitch the car real hard. Where most tracks back through the east, Midwest, you have to kind of drive them straight in. So when somebody's used to driving that way and they come here to ASCOT, it takes them a while to get everything together. And it's just a different type of track, and when they tear this down, there'll never be another one like it anyway.
It's the Indianapolis of sprint car racing. To me, I like to win a race at ASCOT because all the legends have won races at ASCOT, and I hope to become a legend one of these days. So I think that I need to probably try and get that into my file before the series goes away or whatever happens, or the time passes by too quickly that I don't get another shot at coming back. So hopefully I come back and for at least one win in my record book, and hopefully it's here at ASCOT.
Well, ASCOT is probably the roughest racetrack for a driver to learn on. It's flat, it's narrow, it's got a real good clay, so it tries tipping cars over. It's probably one of the greatest racetracks in the world. There's a lot of people back east that watch, the news just to see what's going on at ASCOT. With my travelings, I've been able to see it, and it's really kind of neat to see that ASCOT is that famous.
Well, it's a different type of track than it's a little bit tight on the corners and longer straightaways, where the majority of the tracks have wider corners, and you've got a little more room for error. You can get in a little deep and have a little more room to work with. But ASCOT has got fairly long straightaways for the shape of the corner. In other words, you're going a little quicker than you should into the turn, and you can't make any mistakes. Therefore, if you're not set up for it, it's a rough track to drive unless you run there all the time. There were some guys that were absolutely great, like Gene Brown, for instance. Now, here's a guy that was a great driver, and I think he still is. And Gene never did real well at ASCOT, but everywhere else he was great. I mean, the guy could win anywhere he raced, but he run ASCOT and he had trouble with it because it is very different compared to most other tracks.
It is a racetrack that is a little more difficult. Of course, I always like a racetrack that creates a problem for the race driver, because the best race driver is the guy that solves that problem. And I like ASCOT because you just couldn't go there and run. There are some racetracks that are so easy to run that doesn't require any extra skill. But ASCOT, because the turns are a little tight and the way it's set up and the way it's prepared, you have to be able to run both the cushion and the bottom. And many race drivers, it takes a little time to perfect that kind of a technique.
Honestly, it's long straightaway, okay, and sharp cornered, but not too much bank. And when you come out in another territory, another world, the West Coast, you have to run against very competitive people. The competition here is excellent, and it's difficult for a Midwesterner to come here and do well. So we keep trying.
It's always been a tough kind of a racetrack where you really get them in hard and try to get it gathered up about the middle of the corner so you can get off. But it's always been a real competitive track.
J.C. Agajanian came along and took over ASCOT about the time that it was beginning to really fade, or it wasn't as well maintained as it should have been. And he put money in the track and brought it back, and so we're lucky that people like him were around at the time that he was here.
The year was 1975, and Aggie stepped in to keep ASCOT alive. Open-wheel racing would continue in Southern California. J.C. Agajanian restored the Speedway to its glory years, making it a place fans could see great racing and really enjoy themselves. The Agajanian family has carried on the rich tradition J.C. established.
It's a challenge, there's no question, although I have two brothers and a sister, and my mom still too, so it's a family, really a family enterprise. But to fill my dad's shoes, there's no question that they're pretty big shoes to fill, and all we've done really is try to carry on the tradition basically along the lines that he really set out over almost 50 years of promotion. So it wasn't too hard to just keep doing the same thing that he was doing, really. We appreciate the fans. We wouldn't be open without them, of course, and we try to be responsive to the things they ask for. Interestingly enough, one of the things we do with the fans, we have a section in our grandstand right off the start-finish line that doesn't allow any alcohol, and so a family can come out with their children and sit there and know that no one will be drinking next to them or causing any trouble. And not that we have the troublemakers, because really I think we have the best fans in the country here. They're very, very sophisticated, understand what happens out here, but still we decided to set a section aside just for the families, and so we're very cognizant of our families and our fans, and we appreciate them. And I think when you hear the cheers go up for the drivers, and when you see passing, every once in a while you'll see a rookie in a race who will move up a few spots and the fans are on their feet cheering for him. A lot of fans around the country don't understand that, but here they can see people coming through the pack. They know good drivers or rookies that are coming along well. So I'm very proud of our fans.
I mean, it'd have to be probably in the top, I don't know, 5 or 10%. It's got real nice facilities. Agajanians really work hard to make it nice for the fans. There's not very many places we go to that have showers and lockers and a nice changing area for the drivers. You know, I mean, I've changed in the middle of the pit area before. Agajanians have put a lot of money in this racetrack, and that's probably what's kept it going all these years. The fans appreciate it, the drivers, the owners. You know, if we just race for more money, I think everybody would be happy.
Money is a key factor in winning. Former champ Billy Wilkerson dates back to the early days at ASCOT. He says it didn't take quite as much money in the 60s, but you still had to have your wallet with you when you headed to the track.
It's gotten down to dollars and cents a little more than it did then. You know, you could run a car then for $100 a week. If you spend $100 a week, you spend a lot of money. You know, now if you can get by for $500 a week, you're lucky. So things have changed just a little bit. Of course, the purses have more than tripled too, so that makes a little difference too. Drivers that are driving today, they want the money. You know, when I was driving, well, we took all the money the car made and put it back in the car, and that's the way it was in those days.
Then you had the owners who weren't afraid to dig real deep. Over the years at ASCOT, two names stand out: the late Alex Morales and his legendary tamale wagons, and Bruce Brahmy, the winningest owner in CRA history. Now, is there a secret to Brahmy's success? Well, Bruce says at ASCOT there are really no secrets.
I don't think so. No. I think that everybody copies everybody. There's no wizards out here, you know. And everybody, one goes good, while the next guy, he's going to make his go good too. I mean, he'll copy it. Even put the dents in the same place in the body, sure, yeah.
When you get right down to it, the key is probably putting the right guy behind the wheel. And Brahmy has had some of the best.
And I had Alan Heath drive it. And old Alan, he one-armed her around here 1,000,000 miles an hour. In fact, I didn't realize it was as good as it was until later on. And then we went to another driver, Johnny Woods drove it, and then Donnie Melton drove it. Yeah, we kept moving along the line there. And then we got Paul Jones, and he drove it for about 7, 8 years. And then Paul retired, and he said, why don't you put that Dean in there? He said, okay. And we put him in there. From then on, he won 101 races. Dean did. Yeah, he was great. In fact, he's the guy that made you come back each week. Yeah, right.
I did very well, and I won 3 championships. I won, the most races here at ASCOT. most races in the California Racing Association, which is, to me was the second biggest racing association, besides USAC or World Outlaws. And, I just decided that I was going to retire, and maybe I did retire too quick.
While Thompson has won more races than any driver in ASCOT history, Jimmy Oskey has more titles, 5 CRA championships. Oskey has done it all, and you'll find him out there on Saturday night still running with the current CRA guys.
It seemed like about the only link to from the old and the new, and it's maybe one reason why I keep racing, because I like to tell guys who are racing now about how it used to be back then, and some of the personalities back then, that I raced with Alan Heath and Hogle and Roy Prosser and Frank Cantrell when I was just real young and coming up. And, just like they seem like legends now. And, I'm just happy that I had a chance to race with them. If they know you run at ASCOT all the time, they ask you, they think maybe there's a mystique at ASCOT or something, but it's just one of a kind track. And I've always enjoyed driving here better than anywhere else.
It was a sprint car racetrack, and I just always loved the sprint cars. Being from the Midwest, I'd seen them race Winchester, Salem, Dayton, Terre Haute, stuff like that. And it would just sort of give you, like when you walked in ASCOT, you got the same feeling you did when you walked in Indianapolis. It was Indianapolis of the West Coast, is basically what it is.
Some of your greatest Indy drivers ever have come from there. It's really an honor just to race on the track, and I got to run with a lot of these guys, and it's really something. I mean, I would say for dirt track racing, it's produced more Indy drivers than any track in the United States.
Oh, Parnelli and I used to have a lot of fun, and Hurtubise, old Herc and Parnelli and I, we've had a lot of good shows down at ASCOT.
Prosser was there when it all began. Now you'll find that ASCOT has not forgotten its past. Each year the Western Racing Association old timers are featured at ASCOT, and Walt James continues his love for the vintage cars.
That car number 2 there is driven by Scorchy Bud Sinnott. He's 73 years old. Was a top driver in WRA before the war, the old ASCOT and the old Legion ASCOT even. This car here, there are only 10 of them ever built. Frank Curtis built them. It's a scaled-down model of his Indy Roadsters. That number 9 is a D.O. Howell. It was built by Howell. They built the overheads for Model A and Model B, but it knocked the lower end. The cranks couldn't stand it, so Howell built a complete 5-main engine. That car number 6 there is, I believe, Les D-Line's car right down here in San Diego. It's a 4-foot Riley head on a 1932 Model B block. That's an Art Sparks engine in that car, Sparks and Wyrick. He built that 4-cylinder overhead cam in the early 30s. Then in 1946, Joel Thorne, the multimillionaire, sponsored them. They built a DO 6-cylinder that won Indianapolis. That number 17 is the DiMatteo brothers' car that ran at Gilmore just after the war and just before the war. That's a Studebaker Champion engine in there, 1948 Champion engine. That yellow car is a 3-springer. Notice it has 2 springs in the front. Most of your old passenger cars had 2 springs in the front up to the mid-20s. That's an Alto there, I believe. There's an Offie there, 110 Offies.
It's amazing how far they stuck out of these cars. I can't believe
Well,
the driver...
you built the cars small and light in those days.
But no matter what, someone still has to work on the cars. That hasn't changed since the early days. The pits are still alive with the unsung heroes who keep the equipment on the track and racing week after week. Often their hard work goes unnoticed by the fans, but if you take the time to check out the pits, you'll discover there's as much going on there as out on the racetrack.
I know when they leave this staging area that, I mean, what wants to be done, it has to be done, and our rules reinforce. I don't break a rule. I don't favoritism no one person. I can't. I work directly by the numbers, and this way here, I put it back in my mind that they're only numbers. I don't recognize the driver or the owners. When they go leave here, they're numbers, and that's the way I work. That way I can treat everybody fair. No favoritism to no one.
She's been here ever since I've been coming around here, and she used to just have a car and be an owner, and then she started moving around with tow trucks and gradually worked into the qualifying line over there, and she does a real good job. She's real soft-hearted, down deep, but I've been friends with her for many a year.
You have to love racing. I love, eat, sleep racing. I've got trophies all over my place, and I just love it. That's the reason I do it.
Now, Evelyn has seen many changes in racing over the years. Speed is probably the biggest difference from the early days. That and safety. Roll cages have saved many a driver from serious injury. Yet, according to Walt James, drivers at ASCOT were reluctant to make a change.
About 58, I started trying to get cage roll bars put on the sprint cars in CRA. We even put it in the rule book in the late 60s, and the members all got together, signed a petition, and voted them out again. So we didn't get cage roll bars in CRA cars until 1970.
We also didn't have roll cages, and that calls for a little more respect than some of these drivers, I think, give these cars.
Well, I was the guy that put the big stink up about the cage roll bars, and I fought them harder than anybody did. But I'll tell you something, and this is the first, Mike. I'm admitting now, I just got some racing films, and I've been watching them, and they're all about crashes. And I looked at that, and I thought, I did that a lot without cages, and I always wound up suffering from it. I guess they belong on there. They don't look good, but they should be on the cars.
They were a little more careful then than they are now, I think, and then we didn't have those big humper tires. See, those tires, if you do start to flip, they just increase the height that you flip, because it's like a springboard when they hit the ground, and they just throw you way up in the air again.
Well, I think more than anything, the tires are different. Now they're running a tremendous amount of stagger and big wide tires that we didn't have, and it requires a little different setup. And of course, they run a little faster, so obviously any way that you can go faster, somebody's going to pick up on.
Yeah, it's really changed. The horsepower is way up, probably a couple hundred horsepower over what I started with, one of my better first motors. So, and the tires and the chassis are so advanced right now. That's why we're going quick.
It's definitely probably more frightening watching them than it is driving them. I just got finished watching Eddie Worth drive the Gardner sprint car, and I don't think that I've ever been that nervous in a race car, outside of race cars, watching him. I mean, it's like waiting for the explosion to happen.
And that's how most of the fans feel. True sprint car racing is just flat out exciting. Now, while other tracks have changed over to wing sprints, ASCOT continues to hold the line.
Well, that's true. We have tried to stay as traditional as we can. Evidence of that is the unwinged cars that we run on a weekly basis, the CRA sprint cars. We're the last track in the United States that runs a weekly show without wings, and to us, sprint cars don't have wings. There are cars that have wings, and we don't call them sprint cars, but that's a big controversy among the fans, of course, but I believe our fans and the sophisticated people in Southern California like their racing without the wings, because it really takes more ability on the driver, shows the ability of the driver more than the cars.
Our people here have always felt that the true way to show driving skill, 2 or 3 abreast driving, which you don't really see sometimes with the wings. Well, the other night, the race before the Peabody, the fan appreciation, I remember that the 4 guys were the last 10 laps going together. Schumann, maybe Sweeney, Worth, and McSpadden. You don't see any better racing than that, and you don't see that with wings.
At ASCOT, tradition is a major part of the operation. The Agajanian family points with pride to the Turkey Night Grand Prix. The event started in Southern California back in the 1930s and has featured such greats as Bill Vukovich, Bob Swanson, and Troy Ruttman. The race was always a favorite with J.C. Agajanian, and his family has made it a fixture at ASCOT. Drivers come from all over the country for this one-day event.
It almost faded out, you might say, a few years ago, but my dad brought it back, and it has been here now at ASCOT for many, many years. And the crowds that we're getting are tremendous, and the amount of cars, which are fantastic. Over 70 cars sign in for a Turkey Night race. It is really the biggest one-night race in the country, and of course the tradition, there aren't very many races that have been running more than 48 years in a row, that's for sure.
Well, in 25 years out of the 27 that we've been coming, we won 1963 and 1975, so we've had a lot of seconds and thirds, but never another win. I got to keep trying. It is a little different. If it's raceable, then it's not as much different, but if it's a stop and start night, it's very difficult for Midwest engines to compete with West Coast engines. And it is a guesswork. There's always a certain amount of guesswork in racing, and if we guess wrong, then we're bad. Unfortunately, in the last 5 years, we went upside down 3 times, so that wasn't good either. So we have to try and keep it on 4 wheels, and then to break Ron Schumann's record is going to be near impossible. That's like Rich Vogler at Terre Haute, but nevertheless, we try.
Every time I come here, I get the best equipment there is. They know, you know, most people know I win races, so it helps me because I get the best there is. You know, it's almost like the rich are getting richer kind of in as far as race cars go, because I have my pick of 3 or 4 midgets right now for Turkey Night, and they're all capable of winning. So it really helps. It makes me look good when I have so much good equipment to choose from, more or less.
And it takes top-notch equipment to win the Turkey Night event, because there's so much talent to contend with. Mel Kenyon, Rich Vogler, Sleepy Tripp, and Chuck Gurney are always tough. Then there are the new kids on the block. Parnelli's son, PJ, is making a lot of noise lately, but he knows to take on the likes of Schumann, first you have to make the show, and that can bring out a few butterflies.
Definitely. Turkey Night, I've been here 2 times before, and we didn't make the show either time. We had some problems last year, and my first year I was just struggling with the car and myself. This year I feel a little bit more comfortable. I know I can make it as long as everything goes my way. I don't have any stupid things go wrong, or I just don't brain fade qualifying. But it is nerve-wracking trying, you're thinking about a 100-lap race, but yet you're thinking Sleepy and Vogler and Schumann, they're going to be right there. You watch them and you'll learn.
Another of the upcoming stars is the diminutive Denise Bennett. Now, Denise is a little lady with a real big foot and realizes that she's blazing some new ground.
I feel that I've opened a lot of doors for women, but there's a lot of women out there that can do it and will do it. It's just I do feel good that I was one of the first one, and there's a lot more women out there that can do it. I've just been fortunate enough to have people behind me, but it's nice to see that I'm the first one here.
The 1988 Turkey Night Grand Prix ranks up there with some of the best in the long series. The drivers found the half-mile clay oval a tough test for the 100-lap distance. Several spills highlighted the 2 qualifying races. Turn 1 developed some ruts early on, and the drivers had to rely on their cat-like reflexes to keep their cars on all 4 wheels. As the 100-lapper wore on, Rich Vogler in car number 11 set the pace, with Chuck Gurney giving chase. Halfway home, Vogler almost lost it in the south turn. Well, that's the opening Gurney needed. Within a few laps, he roared by to take over the top spot. And for the next 10 laps, it was a two-car battle. Then, with a checkered flag in sight, Vogler retook the lead, and that set up a dramatic finish. Less than 2 laps to go, and it was a sprint to the wire. Gurney, taking advantage of Vogler's slight bobble, came home with a Turkey night victory. Now, the midgets always draw well at ASCOT, but week in and week out, the CRA sprints are the main attraction. And they have been since the early days of Roy Prosser, Nick Valenta, Bobby Hogle, Alan Heath, and Billy Cantrell. When the sprinters line up for main event time every Saturday night, they bring the crowd to its feet. And when they go into their 4 abreast formation, it creates a certain brand of magic for the fans. Horsepower, noise, shiny paint jobs, rooster tails of wet clay, the exhaust fumes, the danger. It all adds up to one of the most spectacular events in sports. And the fans at ASCOT show their appreciation by packing the house every Saturday night. But it's not just the fans in Los Angeles who appreciate ASCOT. The local guys head for the Midwest during the summer. The mystique of ASCOT travels with them. Fans everywhere want to know what's happening in Southern California.